Warm welcome. My name is Tom Meyer. Today we're in part 2 of our webinar series about data economy basics, Catena-X and PURIS. And today we're going to talk about Catena-X. So this is a very nice example or explanation by Robert Habeck, which is a German politician. And he explains why we need Catena-X and why it's interesting. We will link this video, but more or less, most important part for you seeing current webinar part is that he explains how many parts are used by a car or are manufactured within a car. It's around 40,000 parts. And even the cable harness is around 5,000 parts. And that's very complex, as you can see. And today, very often, there's not even a linkage between the parts and the value chain used within that car or the bill of material. And when considering, for example, quality issues or similar, you will need like a value chain or something you can traverse to inform your partners about issues. And that's more or less one of the key examples what Catena-X used for. So Catena-X provides a backbone for value chains. You could build your use cases, like the quality use case, upon. And I'm skipping that. So to give you an overview about Catena-X, it has been like a first consortia with 28 participants, so 28 big companies, including, for example, the 3 big German original equipment manufacturers with regard to automotives, but also major tier 1 suppliers, additional smaller suppliers, research institutes, for example, like us, and also software application providers. Around the start, there have been more than 300 full-time equivalents working on it, and governmental funding has also has been quite huge, as you can see, with 110 million euros over 3 years. So thank you for funding us, and thank you for taking interest or note of our journey. So what is Catena-X beside the value chain, or where does it come from? So Catena is, I guess, Greek and Latin word for chain, and X is the symbol for the partners. So it's about really constructing a network of partners in the automotive value chain. So as I said, or explained in the video, it's about creating a value chain or data chain. So a digital representation of what's actually done in manufacturing, more or less. So which part are assembled together. And we would like to provide secure and sovereign data exchange within the automotive industry. And that's an interesting part, as you've been learned in part 1, we would like to support data economy. So also to provide big companies as a target group, the major top tier suppliers, but also small, medium-sized enterprises with a good starting point for data economy. And the big question always is, okay, so I get roughly an understanding of Catena-X, but what's in for me? And yeah, easily said, it's about increasing the positive and reducing the negative. So for example, if you take part of Catena-X, it could increase your revenues, because if you're using or supporting a specific standard, that might be of interest for your partners. Additionally, when depending on the use cases you implement or participate in, it has also intangible value creation enhancements or creation due to, for example, being compliant with regulatory or with the ESG to increase your performance. So for example, knowing the PCF value of a specific part might help you in reducing the overall product carbon footprint, which PCF stands for. Beside that, it's great if you automate or digitalize existing processes, which can result or should result in cost savings. Additionally, you could also use use cases, and one of them could be PURIS, you will later learn in part 3 about, with regard to risk minimization or mitigation. So how to cope with risks, for example, in supply chains. So let's talk about how Catena-X is structured. And this is a very good graphics that has been provided by Oliver Ganser via LinkedIn. And it shows how three parts are just forming one part, the cut volume. So overall, the association is like the governance. It provides a planning body to actually build the data space. And this build is done currently commonly in the Eclipse Tractors-X, so which is an open source project governed by the Eclipse Foundation, where you can actually have deployable code, runnable code. And we're building that. So it has been initially governmentally funded, and now companies who take or participate in Catena-X, they continue building these components and building blocks, and also documentation. And finally, we still have some services that need to be run centrally or even decentrally. So for example, like multiple marketplaces. And the first operating company to do that is Catena-X, which governs identities and also marketplaces, or one marketplace currently. So whoever is interested in Catena-X knows that in the mid of 2024, the first research project consortia ended. So how do we now work in the association? And there's more or less like a post-consortia working model. As I said previously, the association provides the overall governance. So as I said previously, the Catena-X association provides the overall governance. It forms multiple committees, which are like bigger groups regarding or targeting specific domains. So for example, one is targeting product lifecycle management, quality and resilience. And within that committee, multiple expert groups are working on specific topics. So for example, within that committee, there are expert groups for traceability, quality and demand capacity management, and PURIS. And if there are no members of that association who are interested to work in a topic or a committee, they can provide a tender. So if there is not already an expert group available, they can ask for one so that we can, for example, work on digital product passports. The association scans those tenders and provides additional expert group. So the committee then will officially tender those expert groups, and the association members can apply to that expert group. So the expert groups are like the working bees and drones here. They commonly do create standards, so normative documents that define how different systems can work with each other. So it's about interoperability and interchangeability. So for example, like different mail clients like Gmail and T-Online working together and still be able to exchange messages, but being different clients, so different companies developing them. That's governed by protocols and standards. Then you have kits, which we will also discuss in more detail, and software releases in form of free open source software that is published within the Eclipse Tractors-X open source project governed by the Eclipse Foundation. And let's discuss the last three topics, because those are the deliverables. Standards are really you need to do that to be interoperable descriptions. So it's about normative documentation, similar to protocols. KITS is the abbreviation for keep it together. And it's like an additional information to the standards, because commonly standards are small and sometimes you need some more examples, because you don't want to have very, very explanatory standards. And finally, you have the running code in form of free open source software, so that you can spin up a data space just without relying on any software provider company. Right. And this graphic really well shows or indicates how or what's covered by a standard and what's covered by a kit, because the standard really is only the main building blocks needed. For example, semantic models describing what information is about and how to provide it. Then you have API specifications if needed, so how do I exchange that information? How do I notify partners, for example? And beside that, additional logic and schema regarding business processes and protocols involved. And if I'm now interested into a specific use case in Catena-X, I can look up the kit, which is structured into 3 different parts. And the first one is the adoption view, which provides like an overall business statement. Why is this kit available? What's the vision to work on? What's the mission? What's the business value? And additional top-level information providing you with the business case. Then, and some of the part is the development area, where you provide, beside the information already available in the standard, with sample data and reference implementations and architecture sketches. And finally, if the kit also has a reference implementation at hand, there's a quick setup guide and deployment scripts so that you can deploy your application with Kubernetes and Helm. Having one example at hand, there's the traceability use case, which you can also see or have a look at on the association webpage. Then you have the kit in the GitHub pages structure of the Eclipse Tractor 6. And this covers a little bit more than the use case standard in the standards library of the association. And beside the open source implementation Trace-X, there are also applications of different service providers. So for example here, SAP, German Edge Cloud and Siemens. And all of these applications can exchange the information that has been described in the traceability use case standard. Meaning that they know how to set up digital twins, data chains, and how to exchange quality notifications. So let's come finally to the different roles involved into the ecosystem of Catena-X. And let's start with the most important one, because we all are just working on Catena-X because there are data providers, so persons providing information to their partners, which are data consumers. And commonly in Catena-X, we expect companies to be both. So they provide information, but they will also consume information for specific use cases. Because that's maybe kind of tough for new starters. There are different service providers. One of them is the advisory service provider, which is just the role of a common consultant as you have it currently for different technology stacks and so on. Additionally, you have some very fundamental services that you need to be running to participate in the use cases, which is, for example, the connector we earlier learned about, and very often also components to provide information via digital twins, which is a central paradigm also in Catena-X. And for example, you could rent more or less these software components by relying on enablement service providers, which do the hosting for you and do the maintenance. And finally, there are business application providers, as we earlier saw on the slide regarding the implementations of traceability. So you could also use software as a service. Or if you don't need those providers, you could do all all on your own, which is also a good idea. Because we have some kind of technical platform, there are onboarding service providers. So they can support you with joining the operating company, so getting a subscription and get everything running, for example, with your business partner data management and so on. And we differentiate the operating company into 2 additional services, so which are core service providers A and core service providers B. Interesting part is that core service provider B provides you with identity information. So when joining Catena-X, you get a business partner number, and this one is only given by the core service provider B, which is always tendered for, I guess, 10 years, if I'm right. The core service provider A, he can be available, or this role can be available multiple times within a network, not only just once. And this is covering, for example, marketplaces. So for example, marketplaces for business applications that are offered by different partners. So like there could be an Android store, there could be an Apple store, marketplaces to that direction, for example. And finally, as we have standards and we would like to cover how data is used and how data sovereignty is applied, there is a conformity assessment body that certifies, for example, your solution you could either create on your own or rent by a business application provider. Right. Additional point, every service provider needs to be qualified or can be qualified within Catena-X by the association. When considering the onboarding process, commonly we are referring to actual users of the ecosystem. And there are 4 major steps you need to consider when starting your journey in Catena-X. First of all, as we previously saw, there are onboarding service providers that support you in boarding on. And first of all, you can select your onboarding service provider to do that. And with your onboarding service provider or partner, you will evaluate the different use cases and define what are you really needing of the Catena-X use cases, which is the one you would like to start participating, and define your business purpose and create like a cost-benefit plan. So why should I participate? After selecting your use cases, you will start with technical integration. So it's about providing data, how to participate in the data space overall, how to get your data right. So it's about data management and governance also. And finally, getting everything productive after, for example, doing the first initial tests and development. And if you're now ready to operate your solutions and use cases within Catena-X, there's still some things to do, because if you introduce new software, you should enable your organization. So commonly this is about cultural training, because it's a very, very collaborative approach in Catena-X. We also call it a radical collaboration. And it's about being aware of how data matters, because bad data will lead to bad insights.